Oh, there! I see that it is so, that you have somehow managed your way through into the essence of the great power that lingers on true through a lineage shared down from historic tales, which carries on through the likeness and the art of sorcery of both human and pony alike. Tales walloped about and regurgitated quite trivially as nothing more than some distorted and disfigured disarrangement, bent to the advantage of those who came into this world with hands, rather instead of that which would be glorious and magnificent, luster and grafted hooves. But tally be the hoe, as it is said amongst us ponies, let the record be raised to bear on the truth that lay unexposed and covered up for so long by the lies and taint of humankind. Above and beyond from the troubling queries subject to the false account, us ponies have suffered for so many tiresome and weary ages, stricken about to carry on through the pounding, enigmatic weight of 1,000 horny elephants, which has lingered on through centuries in the lies told by all men alike. And if you have ever learned anything about the precarious and strange species of the ones observed unto us, known as elephants, it would be quite true to say that the horny are a quite deal heavier than those of a natural state of mind. For there is nothing more spiritually suffocating than a horny elephant. And when that elephant acts upon the feet of his woes, the weight under both measures can be quite of a great expense to the effect of that which is considered uniquely immense and powerful. Such a strife which ponies have observed in the nerve which humans have grown to take for the sake of their own greed and misguided perseverance for that of a better and swifter virtue, integrity which can take to hold no form of rationality from the likes of those who seek it. And as it is for matters of those where integrity is further concerned with, any forcibly contrived sense of existence is nothing more than present in a repressed and weak physical form. Never is it possible for those who dwell in the shadow of their own respite to exceed beyond the boundaries from the vitality and vigor of their own thought. Integrity must be sought out from and honed, like that from the horns of a bull who has become the victim of the tickle monster and seeks to get what he feels to be his own moose knuckles off, using whatever orifice of your body he can make do to be ripe upon. The horns must be accessed to heat him down to a wary halt, long enough to keep him at bay in order to better make an escape. Otherwise, the bull will pierce you, whether it be with his horns or with his moose knuckles that lay at falls before him for where his legs truly are, which is what had originally caused him to charge at you in the very first place, much to the subtle comparison of that which prevails to constructing an entire framework of life and an entire world based around the constant obligation to continue and cover up anything which consists on to be positive, leaving a cloaked and disguised negativity to squander about as the sole proprietor to the life force which fuels the world that now exists inside of the first realm to a nearly utmost and sole entirety, an entity created in the constant and continuous energy from the requirements that have been called necessary to cover up all that pony kind has done throughout the history of their time. It was long known to be said by Bubblescotch the Tenfold, whose teachings were long admired by the great sorcerer Mustafficus Aurelius Abnomicus Tophocus Panomicus Dramont Avarticus Tomlumicus Ignatius Trafficus Severnus Pignatius Mythicus Pravard Talius Estimus Africus Tritolemachus Staver Toctalios Flavicus Dick Stacy Edwards Amicus Avralicus III. Bubblescotch felt that the map was deputed to be subject to the incorporeal quintessence exclusively to be derived to that of a pony alone, with humans not being pure or perceptive enough to perceive such a place that a map could lead. Though, of course, what the Tenfold had wrong was that it was not possible for only just a pony to achieve the uses that this map had. However, just most commonly demonstrated by ponies as it has been throughout the ages through its proper implementation. In that he said, quote, "It is but the plight of a wise one to understand the truth from that who speaks with such illustrious hooves. One must always keep their eyes abroad and open to the causes in both realms at all times. For in times when doubt and reason come into debate, that it is only in the immaterial essence of a pony to show in the second and even sometimes the first realm that a shimmering glow will take to light and muster through a presence of sheer exhibition of moralistic ferocity. The hooves drive the heart of our existence, and such a heart thrives under the embrace of good virtue. It is there, in the heart, that the energy will make to gather within a powerful radiance through a glittering light, which harnesses into the mechanics of that which is also subject to our contrasting conflictions, for which it has reason for aim and expulsion from the body. Such a force develops from the high potency of purity in the pony's soul, which ponies do derive to naturally engender from a disposition for knowledge from a startling young age, a drive which is based around the instinctive makeup of their genetics and the stature that leaves their tenure next to the rivaling opposition of the human kind. Unquote. However, this does not mean that all ponies are perfect and are exempt from the folly of making falsities of their own. It comes down to interpret that when a good pony's hooves become aglow in either realm, that under the circumstance of any debate whatsoever with either human or pony, that it is the one whose hooves make out to be aglow, is it the one who speaks of the solemn truth. For real hooves are not, be it in the case of those who are of humankind. To the light let it be the judge, as it is said. Such is the reason my hooves stand before you here and now, bright as the left hit of the great goddess Anesthesia herself, I dare say to you, troubled by their sense of perception, for lack thereof any true immaterial being within their own material waters, as it is in the cases that deals of most humans. Bubblescotch the Tenfold went on to say there in such matters, quote, the human mind can only ascertain to the likeness of others who were born within the same deformities as its own, expanding beyond the boundaries for a human of even its own commonly perceived inability, to which they constantly are displaying on a physical basis for a large portion of time, which is to understand another kind, can often in turn lead to an alienation from those who humans provide to. In other words, that particular human subject that attempts to reach beyond the boundaries. For the lust of power which humans commonly share to have, they often create an environment which makes it difficult for any kind of internal, ethereal essence to develop. For it is for a soul of any kind to develop, a certain quest for knowledge is absolutely and quintessentially necessary on all levels. Levels which consist to the four states of knowing: the physical form, the metaphysical form, the astrological form, and the subconscious form, which pertains to the matters that deal with dreams and other various sorts. Many go on to mistake and confuse both the astrological form and the subconscious form to be identical to the metaphysical form. But there is most certainly, indeed, a difference. Without the astrological form and the subconscious form, the metaphysical form would be greatly impaired, but could still exist in a quiet and suffused state. The astrological form is the state which deals with pursuing to understand what lies beyond the boundaries of the world that we alone live in, a matter which many humans show to lack, displayed and shown through past instances in cases where humans have attempted to falsify an occurrence which had actually taken place regarding the happenings of a pony in kind. So, in essence, a human can develop a soul, but by the standards which ponies develop internally as ethereal beings, not much is there that can truly be accounted for in regards to the human soul. Unquote. Bubblescotch the Tenfold went on to later comment into specifics on how subject this statement was to humankind, and when it tallies up to this point in time where we are at now, the count makes out to be quite at a vast and lengthy number in which it should indeed apply. However, in his time, and even others there in the future, there were many exceptions. Otherwise, such a great deal of many stories from the past would not be available here and now for me to tell to you today. as they had actually happened through various different ways and reasons for their tellings. I suppose I should first start off with a brief overview of my own story and provide you with an introduction of myself, so you know who it is that is talking to you here, inside the energy of my ancestral line, which I can control through the waves and the currents, which you will come to know here in a bit as the Second Realm. I am Brianwan, leader of a clan who roamed upon the First World nearly 5,000 years ago. The Pony Elders, as we were known by all who inhabited the land that was around us. I remember it so clearly as it was. The grass was as green as it has ever been. The land we knew was surrounded by roaring seas filled with rippling waves driven by the ever so often soaring winds, which on the occasion would be in the accompaniment in the presence of vagrant storms during the springtime and in the summer. Our perseverance for power was quaint, comparing in strength to the winds that flustered swindlingly about the sea that very springtime. For so much time we had spent an effort in seeking the territory that lay beyond the First World up until that very time. Just before the very summer we passed into the world which you see me in the present of, a vast and endless world known as the Second Realm. It all began when I had come across, which at the time is what appeared to me as some sweet-smelling brown dust contained inside a shiny hollow canister. There it sat quietly, leaning against a small pile of stones next to a stream, near to a path which I had been walking along as I made my way to the morning gathering with the rest of the elders that day. I approached up to its side and nudged the tip of the canister with my muzzle, just as it began to rain, enough just to open it up and reveal its contents. I gently reached about my nose inside. I noticed that the unique smell of its essence was so potent that the tickling sensation rang throughout my nerves, so much to the point that it caused me to instantly inhale a large amount of it into my nostrils as I smelled to take a bigger waft of the substance. From that very moment it entered into my body, I began to feel a euphoria like I had never felt before at that time. It was like a ripely heated cucumber had just been placed into the anus on a cold winter's night, shortly before bedtime to better keep the harshness of the cold at a stern bay. My senses became anew and fresh, as if I had only just stepped into that first world you may know as Earth for the very first time. I felt comforted, protected, as if there were no such poise that could possibly surmise the new experience that had just awoken the senses which I had never felt before. It was not long after that I lifted my nose out from the breeches of the canister, that seconds later rain began to freeze in place, slowly coming to halt, as with everything around me, from the small current of the stream all the way to the breeze blowing against the wavy grass, along with all plant life to each side of my startled disposition, as there I stood. Even the squirrels at the border of a nearby forest came under the reaches of some kind of spell, which had their actions to be tapered complete in a chilled, frigid, cold suspension. What could the source of this be? I thought to myself, wondering as I took a few steps closer in order to observe the effects that took and had left the stream stuck into place. To better call upon a clear perception of my own situation, it was so strange how this new feeling could have suddenly made time completely come to an abrupt halt. And if truly that had been what it was, I thought, that was causing this obscure oddity, what was I to do? How was I to control this strange phenomena that was taking place right before my very eyes? If indeed it was the result of the source of this wonderful feeling which the mysterious brown dust had just provided into me, I turned and began to trot curiously back over to the path from which I had first left, just before I had noticed the strange lonely canister laying above the stones next to the stream. An impertinent feeling of pomposity riding on the rim of an extrinsic self-importance took hold of me. Some kind of new identity was thrusted inside of me, awakening something inside of my very withers to a new source of life which there could have possibly been. As soon as that feeling had come to take me about, riffling around, down the path, stepping across and out through the still wind, The raindrops, which had stood motionless, began to formulate into objects. Objects which I found had resembled ponies from our clan, dressed in the usual celebratory attire of hooded dress robes, with a small patch that held a cross sewn onto the chest of the robes that had been encumbered by a circle. Ponies who had been gathered around a figure I knew could have only have been one pony in particular, and I knew in my heart that it was me. Eventually, more raindrops began to assume a shape into some circular figure above all of the pony figures, into what had appeared to be a moon. It was under that moon that the ponies who I had seen before followed me into some kind of portal, which had just spawned between two of the pillars of a circular piece. For as long as I had been leader of the clan, we had been convinced that there must be more to life than just death alone. It could not possibly make any sense at all that something so horrible would be life itself, in a world where you are born into so much health and good comfort, and then to have that all taken away from you, to exist as nothing more than something who knows nothing else other than the pain from all that it had taken away from its life force and its cause therefore. To never have that back again for the rest of all eternity. For that which it had only been able to enjoy for such a small amount of time in the whole scheme of everything, to not be able to have even any accomplishments in death or acknowledgement from inside the world, where the concept of achievement had very first conceptually been understood. And even at the time, as some feared, if one just ceased to exist altogether when that time came to pass, even though I knew that there was an answer to everything, there had to be a way to avoid this hopeless atrocity. It just seemed right that it could only be something which could be voided for only those who pursued out for the equitable knowledge, a perk from the mechanisms of life that only those who knew the answer could have the experience of obtaining. The odd formations which gathered before me that morning as I galloped excitedly down the dirt road only confirmed that this ability, this dust, and the powers that it provided to me was indeed the key to everything we had ever needed to achieve our goal for that of seeking eternal life. As soon as I had stopped from my wistful, excited gallop, so did the raindrops cease in making out in formations, and as such all life continued on from the standstill at which it had once been, from the seconds after I had pulled my head from outside the shiny canister near to the stream. I trotted back over and placed the lid back onto the canister and placed it inside the satchel I had carried around my shoulder. I knew that there must be some time for experimentation before certain conclusions came to be of concrete matters. Later on that morning, I went to inform the rest of the pony elders on my certain discoveries I had made and my intention to further investigate into such matters. The dust seemed to procure hints onto answers which I had sought and worked to the will of my energies. As I know now, that was not at all far from the truth. As I now know it, veterinarian dust, as it is referred to by those who came to make coal onto its aid. The veterinarians, as they are known, created this strange brown powder which I had come across, for reasons of strengthening a connection from one's life source in the place of a body into the second realm from within the first world as you know Earth. Be it that one day did the prophet foretold in the prophecy of Determinine never come about, in a time when all magic had ceased to exist because the truth had been washed away and long forgotten, so that one day the Tickle Monster and his wretched plight to bring down the world into darkness under a metapause for all an eternity would be brought to an end. And such a prophet would not require near as much time to find his otherworldly strength as it would take to find his path, as it would in any other circumstance would he have gone without it. Hephaestus was his name, as you probably know from this first tale this electromagnetic contraption showed you that I am using to speak to you through. It was said by Eratosthenes of Cyrene that, quote, "It is not uncommon for a pony to come across the path of a can of veterinarian dust somewhere in the time throughout the course of his life. Chances be to the better winds that he does than if he does not, so long as he keeps his mind open and his heart in a true form. In any such cases, it is safe to say that there is quite surely a 60% chance that such an encounter will come to cross with a test that is made to be held." Unquote. And even though Hephaestus succeeded and prevented the world from being shed into the darkness of a metapause altogether, The Tickle Monster is still out there. As we have seen most recently, he was responsible for the spread of a recent new disease labeled COVID-19, for even the refusal of the truth to the origins of this world and that which all magic thrives off of is just as hard on him as it is on the other veterinarians. As you full well may know, he too was a part of that great kingdom long, long ago. And since Hephaestus had put an end to his only means around the deterioration of the first world's refusal to believe and learn from the truth, and embrace the light source of which their lives truly spin from off of, which had been causing what powers that still remained to him their greatest afflictions, similar in ways as it does to the others who he was once in alignment with, but also much more severely because of the darker and riskier path that he had chosen for his own. He implied what little magic he could still seep into this world in the form of a virus that can easily kill someone with a greater fat mass than muscle mass. Someone who, in other words, did not treat life with very much respect and had become quite careless in taking so much for granted. Just as it was for Hephaestus on a far more trivial level. Even after I warned him, you must cut down on the veterinarian dust, young pony. Telling him too much of one thing is not good, especially when that thing is providing him with a stronger and stronger connection into the second realm with the side effect of slight incoherence, because of which the Tickle Monster was able to capture a hold of his dreams and made it seem as though as he had slain all of the members of the Great Council. Which, of course, was false. Hephaestus's only last true enigma was his final encounter with Babcock in the forest before what happened was truly meant to be. And so it was that he died for all of us and freed the spirits of all of those that the Tickle Monster had captured through the art of hymenography over the many centuries. I took to experimenting on the new abilities I had come to own that very night. At first, I could lift stones, and then stones turned into whole cottages. Then, eventually, I learned to harness the life forces of my fellow ponies from within my clan, crawling upon them to chant as I instructed in the manner in which I instructed. This was no small feat, though, mind you, but there is no meaning to explain exactly what fashion it was in that I was able to gather the most energy from their sorcerous chants. The point of the matter it be is I was able to move even whole boulders at a very single time. Which is exactly the reason to explain how the mysterious structure of the Stonehenge was built as you know it today. Which is, of course, another item which humans have gone to certain lengths to disguise in a veil of mystery and falsities. The very structure, the pinnacle, at the peak of my entire life's work. Back from my time in the first world, where you are at now, you have, of course, heard that no one knows how anything or anyone could have lifted such stones of such a mass to be arranged in the manner or positions they were during that time. Well, there you have it. Now you know. And that is how it was. But what is not quite right is that I never quite finished up with my story yet. Through the abilities that the veterinarian dust had granted me, I was able to see into some strange, inexplicable darkness, which had contained a very bright mist that kept nothing but pure blank space alight. Every so often, when I would go to place my will upon the energy of my thoughts, hard enough deep into the subject of the answers that could lead to the prospect of eternal life, an opening into such a place would occur. Of course, I now know this place to be the second realm, and have grown to become quite comfortable here. However, as it is nothing at all like the first world. No rolling beds of grassy green hills, no trees, no water, no food. Precisely to the point of nothing other than our own timeless, unaging bodies is what we found to be the result of our pursuit for eternal life, which I had once led, and which led us to where we are at now. All that is here is nothing more than darkness, illuminated into nothing but ourselves by the eternal mists of life, leaking about as they do into the land of Veterinaria, which can at times provide its own perks, although those are not needed for much of an introduction, I am sure, and for now not too much of an explanation, but, if anything, just a brief overview If you are not aware of the myths of life, you should know that it is where most beings become when they die, and it is where most beings become from when they are born into life among the first world. I believe would be a proper way of applying terminology into the matter. There is no true way for me to explain it to a concise degree, for I myself evaded it and cannot account for the experience which provides the form of an afterlife. Though what I can say is that there is still some part of the being that exists, only in that it returns in a more mature form back to the place from where it was originally created. The essence of the soul is the myths of life. For all those who choose to dissect that and apply their own use of language and theories, who are true and right into their ideas and statements, it is nothing more for the benefit of implementation and manipulation of that which was created inside the myths long ago as part of its own being, for the extension of one's own life force. For there is no real prosperity which can be acquired or achieved without the concept of understanding of what one is or who one truly is for that matter. Dictylus Erastus Ignatius Totalus, the great pony responsible for the implosion of the legendary Atlantis into the sea, through his own terms of magic and time he spent with his own canister of veterinarian dust. After it was that the Atlanteans, who consisted of a population made up entirely of humans, had bent outward to set out on a pony hunt, and such a hunt that would have eradicated all ponies of the first world, as it was known, had the Atlanteans not been stopped when he put a halt to their queries. The act ended up taking his own life. But he is considered great and cherished amongst all those who know his true tale still today. For few in the first world who know his tale, though it may be, he even once said into such fairs as it is, quote, "Those who are lost can never truly find their way back into the heart of the soul without the embrace of understanding what the soul is through the course of its complete entirety. We are born at the heart, but it is the folly of temptation that leads us astray and into the shallows. Therein, upon the shallows, does the selfishness of those who cannot master to swim upon the currents of the many depths of knowledge lie to suffer the fate of that who waits at the shores to greet them. For it is the home of death to lament upon the shores of the very soul, and there he waits greedily, waiting to collect those for his own who cannot surpass the tests of life which require a substantial life force. For death, the end himself, cannot wade past the shallow shores of ineptitude, as it is that such boundaries as he is imprisoned to are for him, and there to remain for his own company alone. Those who live beyond the boundaries of death's shores know no true death, for death is only but a matter of belief. In such a matter of a belief that there is no more to life than just an end, and so willingly pursue to discover all of its wonders in every plausible personal attribute which the prospect of succession so requires. It is those who prove to make the most of themselves in an assessment presumed in all honesty and virtue, who live forever to some state of condition or another. Those who strengthen the core of their soul to such an extent it is so much that the life force which once ran through animatedly of their body and mind can never actually see a literal true end or demise." Unquote. And even though all of the physical elements which the first world provided to me are absent from where I am at now, I do manage to have picked up a few new abilities that are quite worth their while from the time when we all first passed through the portal. Like that, such as looking upon any one or thing inside of the first world of which I so desire through windows, which I and any member of my clan can open about for the purpose of our own observation. Windows that none to the other side can see, or even oftentimes it is that we have so found that we can even break across and through the enchantments that protect the other world, Veterinaria, admitting through the spells put in place by the great council of the veterinarians long, long ago, and recount memories from all that we have seen. And for those who stroll on to my lineage and share the same blood as my very own, of that which runs at its deepest through even my very core, I am even able to make a temporary leap back into the first world to meet them, so long as their mind is willing to have me. And just as curious as it is, it seems as though I have found a mind that is connected to my own. Through some way or another, it is true that you share a relative or even multiple relatives of mine. For what is even more peculiar is that our connection is such of a strong force that I can even show you visions or part of history for as it took place and as it actually happened, or the visionary details, as well accounts of journal entries and manifestos of ponies from certain pasts. Not every spick and span, for that would take far too much time, but rather all of the good stuff. Everything which defined that pony as who he really was and how things really had taken place. I felt it right from the very first off when I found you, and I knew it was for certain that this was the perfect opportunity to set the record straight once and for all. But, again, I am getting off track from the final bits and pieces of my own tale. It was that very summer, after the circular structure was finally erect, that together, with all of our energies combined into one singular force, the Pony Elders were able to travel through a portal into the second realm, never to return again into the first world as a permanent resident. There is no way back for us, although even if there was, I could not say that I would indeed ever return. We had achieved what many others have commonly revered about for ages on end, passing through into a gate which further on in time a legendary king would even give his name to. Though mistaken that he was, the gate in which came to hold his name was far different than the portal that we had gone through, and a gate that so many others had found themselves bound in the pursuit of, such as Alexander the Great, and a special little significant other who came across into the path of Alexander's reign, passing in only for a short time as they did, or at least for one of them, but just so much as to gather a glimpse of the power of that which the other side beheld, which he could take back into the physical world with them, which allowed this figure to bring back with him a system of magic which we could not offer. As for what he managed to accomplish, provided a special kind of mind, one which would require the specific path to the entrance in which he had proceeded and therefore returned from. Nevertheless, we had achieved our goal in life, and found to our own benefit that the special powers which we were granted had a perk that no pony, or human for that matter, will ever be able to say that they were able to achieve. And that is to show you what really happened throughout pivotal moments of history throughout the entirety of the physical world, which had indeed been covered up or changed by humans throughout its vast, dire course. So it is that I feel it would be most prudent to start first with one of our scholars and give you a finer taste of some of the more fascinating bits and pieces of knowledge that ponies have had to offer. In such as that, there, it takes us all the way to the time of 334 BCE, when Alexander the Great had been reaching the area of his conquest, which was subject to the very same land which I had at one time lived on so very long ago. The great sorcerer Mistophagus had his place higher up in the ranks of his tribe, and was the key advisor to Brenos, chieftain of the Senones, a very notable tribe among the Celts back then during that time, and as such his personal manifesto was vibrant, rich in the knowledge of his discoveries and teachings, which he had obtained from his former tutor therein quite promptly, and just having left luminary school, wittingly divulging out in some of the most precious secrets to be known inside the subject of both mind and magic. All there for you to see, and for even furthermore, there for me to show you, as I use its words to bring to life and display to you the very existence of a true vessel of magic, and so that it is much to be taken literally, a sorcerer to be known to all kinds as best as it is to be known. So, what not a better place to begin than in the same place to where it all began, for me and even you, as it is, of course, that we are related through the vast vicinity inside the similar networks of bloodlines. So come along now, and let me show you how it all really happened. Back within a time and era of the First World, when ponies were regarded as much different creatures than you know them very well to be with you in the current day present.